I can show you how I live in a little bit. I wanna unbutton your pants just a little bit. I take you to the candy shop. BCBG, Burberry, Dolce & Gabbana.
Curtis 50 Cent Jackson, from a child growing up in South Jamaica to a hip-hop icon, is now a businessman with tens of millions of dollars in shares in Coca-Cola. He's richer than CEOs global icons, with contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars. However, he still drives old cars through the decades. Few people know that behind this is a career journey filled with ups and downs. He was shot, 9 times was in debt, 3 times his assets, and received a series of threatening calls saying, "If you dare to step back on stage, the name 50 Cent will be engraved on your tombstone." Tragedy struck so quickly that he hadn't even had time to fully savor the taste of glory. The stage where he was once hailed is now the quickest door, leading him to meet God. But why was 50 Cent silent, accepting all demands instead of calling the police? Is your action protecting money or something else? Who was behind the incident? Be prepared, because this truth is not for the faint of heart. What 50 Cent has gone through over the past 22 years is more terrifying than the Conjuring horror series. 1. The child of secret agreements. Curtis Jackson, the child who was called the result of a deal from the moment he cried his first breath, where people consider oxygen precious. No money, no place to sleep, no meals, no tomorrow. He was born in 1975 when America was still touting the American dream on television. But just step outside the screen and you'll see a different America, where people trample over each other to survive. His mother, Sabrina Jackson, was only 15 years old when she gave birth to Curtis. The whole neighborhood called her Brina, a rare female drug dealer who dared to exist among a forest of men. She admitted she didn't have Curtis out of love or by plan. He is a byproduct of a world where emotions have no value, where bodies, beliefs, and youth can all be traded for money. There, every hug is a negotiation, and every night that passes comes at a price. However, a mother's love still remains. Brina doesn't show her love with words, but by putting herself in danger every day to earn money to support her children. To outsiders, she was a dealer. To Curtis, she was both mother and father. He later recounted, "She's so tough, I don't even know when I'm allowed to show emotion." That made him believe that without his mother, everything would go wrong. But then the worst happened. His mother died in a fire, and that's what the police told a child. It's understandable, because in their eyes, a dead dealer means one less problem for the world. And what about a child's emotions? Who cares? If they knew how to care, they would have become psychologists, not handcuffs to arrest people. A child without a father. A child has no answers about their mother's death. A child living in a neighborhood full of people who are just shells of themselves, going to work, doing business, going to prison, and then returning to the same place. While America boasts success stories like Bill Gates or Ronald Reagan in South Jamaica, a boy is learning to dodge bullets instead of learning to spell. And then the richest people in the country said, "Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, work hard." But what is effort worth? In South Jamaica, there's no startup, only start trouble. If God were to rise again here, he'd probably ask for an early release, because even he wouldn't know where to begin. After his mother's death, Curtis went to live with his grandmother in the 9-person house where love had to be shared equally among 8 other grandchildren. There he was no different from starring in a hit Disney play Cinderella and the 7 Dwarfs. To be respected, you must have a voice. And boxing became the first tool for that. But the punch wasn't enough to buy dinner. Curtis followed in his mother's footsteps, starting to deal drugs when he was only 12 years old. For many poor black people in America, drug dealing isn't a choice, it's a last resort. Legal work doesn't accept them. Education was interrupted from a young age. The neighborhood has no factories and no companies that hire. Everything is arranged so that they will always fail. And of course, you can't go out at night without eventually running into something. He was arrested at the age of 19 for possession of drugs and weapons. 6 months in the training camp was the price for his youth. Did you know that police officers have a quota to catch enough people to be rewarded? And who is most vulnerable? Poor black people in a place with many social problems. Each arrest is a plus for their career, a minus for someone else's life. It's a cycle that has been established across many presidencies. After getting out of prison, Curtis started turning to music. He wrote in a friend's basement the first rap lines were the size of a forgotten generation. Jam Master Jay of Run DMC heard the truth in his voice and brought him into the studio. In 1998, Curtis signed a contract with Columbia Records. His debut album Power of the Dollar was recorded in 2000 and immediately caused a sensation he dared to touch over 30 famous rappers, from Jay-Z, Nas, and DMX to Missy Elliott. Jay-Z even responded on stage at Summer Jam, "Go ahead and rob me." 50 in just one night. The unknown boy from South Jamaica became 50 Cent, the new bad boy of American rap. Have you ever wondered why almost every rapper follows a similar path: poverty, violence, fame? Because for them, it's the only way to get a taste of what's called power and respect. In the slums, being a rapper is as respected as being a gangster. And if you're lucky enough, rap can change your life. But just like entering a casino in Los Angeles, everyone is allowed to place bets, but not everyone walks away with a golden net. And this is just the prelude to 50 Cent's real series of tragedies. 2. When Fortune Feels Like a Trap. May 2000. Power of the Dollar has just been completed and is preparing for release. But that morning, 50 Cent didn't show up at the studio. He was lying on the street in front of his grandmother's house, blood pooling around him. 9 bullets. 1 bullet went through the cheek, 1 through the arm. 3 bullets were lodged in the legs, and 1 almost went through the heart. The doctor said you would never speak again. And Columbia Records announced contract canceled. The reason is very professional. We don't want to be involved in violence. New York police opened a file, collected shell casings, photographed the scene, and then the case gradually died with the note, "Lack of cooperation from the victim." People started whispering, if this was an organized revenge plot, why didn't anyone get caught? If this was random behavior, why were 9 shots fired? Being shot at such close range in broad daylight right in front of the house, it's impossible not to see the face of the person who pulled the trigger. Even a kicked dog knows who kicked it, let alone a rapper who lived on the streets. One can only guess either the shooter was protected or 50 knew the identity of the perpetrator and chose to remain silent. Perhaps you understand street culture better than anyone else. Snitching is a serious crime, even more terrifying than death itself. But above all, there's one detail that sends shivers down your spine: the bullet wounds in precise locations. All 9 bullets hit vital areas, but none hit the heart or head. The perpetrator was clearly close enough and skilled enough to shoot him dead, if he wanted to, but he didn't. Doctors said his survival was a miracle. But the street people understood differently. It wasn't an assassination, but a warning. A warning was sent with 9 bullets, enough to say, "I can kill you," but still leaving a breath for him to remember who truly holds the power of life and death. A few months earlier, 50 Cent released Ghetto Quran, which wasn't boastful or arrogant, but meticulously detailed the Supreme Team and names within the industry. He directly mentioned Kenneth Supreme McGriff, the notorious drug kingpin from Queens. To the public, it was real rap. To the underworld, it was the ultimate violation. Many people believed that it was because of that article that he was targeted. Rumors quickly pointed to one name, Daryl Homo Baum, a Queen Street thug with ties to the Supreme Team. They say Baum is the trigger man. But then just a month later, Baum was shot dead. No witnesses, no explanation. People in the industry call it a cleanup job, cleaning up the source and eliminating witnesses. A person shot 9 times survived. A named suspect died suddenly. The police file was closed in silence. After the shooting, no company dared to sign a contract with him. Everyone was afraid the name 50 Cent would bring trouble. Columbia Records canceled the entire project and demanded contract compensation. And in just a few months, he went from having the potential to become the new icon of rap to plummeting straight to the bottom, carrying a debt of $32.5 million. That number is so large that, in 2001, with that amount of money, you could have bought an entire small building in Manhattan, or about 40 new Porsche 911s. 50 Cent used to make a living selling drugs, but now he himself has become a debtor to the music industry. His career peak was short-lived. Those who once called him a rising star now avoid him like the plague. He even went to the office of a music director to ask for another chance to record, but was met with a chilling curse. "You're a troublemaker. No one wants to die with you." With his contract terminated, reputation tarnished, and tens of millions of dollars in debt, 50 Cent not only collapsed financially but was also trapped by his own survival. The name 50 Cent from then on not only meant half a dollar, but also the price paid for a human life, surviving but losing everything. He used to sing, "Get rich or die tryin'," but after 9 bullets and $32 million in debt, those lyrics sounded like self-mockery. Because sometimes getting rich doesn't set us free, it turns our entire lives into a gilded trap. 3. He built an empire from rejection. After being shut out by the entire music industry, 50 Cent began to understand one thing. In America, people only respect winners, but they fear those who refuse to die. And you are the second type of person. In 2014, Curtis 50 Cent Jackson went knocking on the doors of every major television network, HBO, Showtime, Paramount, with the script for a series he co-wrote with screenwriter Courtney Kemp. The story revolves around Ghost, a drug kingpin who wants to retire and become a legitimate businessman. A man uses his own sins to escape poverty. It's too similar to the life of 50 Cent himself. But the only response I got was head shakes. The major companies said, no. Too dark, too violent, too realistic. It doesn't fit the image of America they want to sell on screen. For them, characters like Ghost should be on the evening news, not on primetime television. And when they closed the doors, 50 Cent didn't beg, he opened another door. He opened G-Unit Films and Television Inc., investing the little money they had left, and with a strange belief that the story of the slums was as worthy of being shown on screen as any other story. He wrote, edited, produced, cast unknown. Young actors personally edited the trailer, and then took the product to Stars, a smaller, lower budget, but more daring television network. And this time, they said yes. As a result, Power, a series centered on the criminal underworld, and the business world became a phenomenon. 200 million views, 5 spin-offs, and a television universe known as the Power Universe. In just a few years, that empire was worth over $300 million, bringing 50 Cent an annual income of $0 million. He not only saved his career, but also an entire film genre that Hollywood had looked down upon. What's remarkable is that he didn't run from the past, but used it to write the screenplay. The scars from the 9 bullets became the opening detail. The transactions, betrayals, and ambitions within the criminal underworld are dissected with the accuracy of someone who truly lived within it. Each episode is like a slice of real America, where the dream must be earned through blood, not scholarships. 50 Cent once said in an interview, "If they don't let me tell my story, I'll tell it in a way that makes them listen." And he really did it. Power wasn't just a commercial success. It became a symbol of creative control. When Hollywood says, "Don't bring real life into the movies," you turn real life into a brand. When they stopped him from entering the system, he created his own system. If HBO is the castle of the born rich, then Power is the stronghold of those who rose from the bottom. He turned scars into scripts, wounds into franchises. But what impressed the audience most wasn't money or fame. It was the way he rebuilt his life after being written off multiple times. He lost his voice, his contract, his reputation, and all his support. But instead of disappearing like hundreds of rappers of his time, he changed his battlefield. From record to screen, from microphone to camera, from victim to director of her own story. It wasn't a lucky journey, it was a survival instinct. Because for 50 Cent, survival was never a goal, but a statement. If no one wants to tell my story, I'll tell it so well they'll have to buy a ticket to see it. When Power peaked, 50 Cent didn't stop. He continues to expand the cinematic universe. Power Book 2, Ghost Raising Conan Force. Each series is a fictionalized piece of memory. And so he created a parallel Hollywood, a world where the outcasts out there could step in and tell their stories. For many, 50 Cent is an example of adversity breeds greatness. But for him, adversity doesn't create anything. It only eliminates those who aren't resilient enough. From a rapper shot 9 times and bankrupt, he became a producer, controlling hundreds of millions of dollars with a media empire that companies once scoffed at, but now want to acquire. You can't change the past, but you can turn it into an asset. The bullet holes can't be erased, but they're etched onto the screen. so the audience has to see them. From someone who was once excluded from the industry, he became the master of the game. Hollywood didn't open its doors, so he built his own walls. And now Hollywood has to knock on his. 4. The price of being feared. When you make the whole world fear you, you also have to live in fear. That saying was never uttered by 50 Cent, but his entire life is the clearest demonstration of it. In his peak years, he had everything a person who once came from the slums could only dream of: money, fame, power, and even a media empire called G-Unit. But the price of making others bow down is that no one dares to come near. Imagine your office in 2010. The phone rang non-stop, the assistant reported the lawyer held the files, and the security guard stood waiting for orders. The camera is always on, recording every meeting, every glance. People listened to him, feared him, and avoided him. In the glass room on the top floor, power was so dense it was suffocating. He is the center of a network of power that he no longer controls himself. Everyone works for him, but no one is truly on his side. You once said in an interview, "I don't sleep deeply. I just turned off the lights and waited for dawn." That's not a lament, but an accurate description of the state of someone who no longer knows what peace is. He was afraid of losing control, afraid of silence, afraid that just 1 minute of carelessness would cause everything to collapse. His reputation, his money, even his life. When you survive 9 bullets, you don't believe in luck anymore. You only believe in vigilance. Success made him an icon, but it also made him a target. He understands that every smile around him can turn sour overnight. From colleagues and partners to those who once shook hands to celebrate victory. Anyone can betray you if the price is high enough. So 50 Cent chose the only way he knew how to survive: by controlling everything. He doesn't trust anyone enough to delegate authority. There are no teammates, only employees. There are no friends, only useful people. He built his empire with walls of steel, but those very walls eventually became his prison. Power makes him untouchable, but it also takes away the most human thing: the feeling of being trusted. In the entertainment industry, they say he's walking alone in a forest of money. The phrase sounds elegant, but it's actually a description of absolute loneliness. Once a reporter asked him, "Are you still afraid of anything?" He just smiled, "I'm afraid of peace." The answer seemed wild, but it was starkly true. Because when you've lived half your life constantly on guard, silence is no longer peaceful, but a harbinger of an impending storm. The cold in your villa is greater than the cold at the old training camp. At boot camp, at least you know who the guards are and who the prisoners are. But in the villa, that boundary disappears. The waiter could be the one who planted the camera. The collaborator could be someone waiting for the right moment to sue you. Living in luxury, but always on the defensive. That's not life. It's a silent battle. 50 Cent once used fear as a tool. He understands that if people are afraid of you, they won't dare to oppose you. But he didn't expect that fear would also turn around and devour him. Every day he wakes up amidst million-dollar contracts, closed-door meetings, and people who say yes, but never look him in the eye. Power made him rich, but it also made him poor in things that can't be bought: trust, kinship, and peace. In your world, fame is like a spotlight shining directly in your face. It makes you stand out, but it also blinds you. At that peak, he no longer knew who was real, who was fake, who loved him for Curtis Jackson the person, and who only needed 50 Cent, the symbol of power and fear. When others look at him, they see a smart businessman, a successful rapper, a surviving wolf. But if they looked closer, they would see a man imprisoned by his own image. Every wall he built to protect himself was also a wall that prevented him from touching the world. You once said, "I don't believe in happiness, only in existence." The words sound cold, but they are the very definition of his life. To some extent, 50 Cent no longer lives like a human being. He operates like a machine of power programmed by the past, sustained by fear, and armored by success. The whole world calls you 50 Cent, a symbol of strength, survival, and absolute power. But the last person who called him Curtis Jackson disappeared long ago. But one question still lingers in the air amidst the cheers of success and hundreds of millions in revenue. When you tell your story too many times, do you still remember what's real and what's acting? 5. The warrior with no war left to fight. Every warrior needs a battlefield. And you've won everything. And that's the tragedy. Las Vegas, 2025. The auditorium was as bright as a liquid gold feast. 6 shows a contract worth $5 million. A figure any rapper who has ever touched a microphone would dream of achieving. 50 Cent walked onto the stage wearing a black vest and a sparkling necklace, and the cheers of tens of thousands of people echoed like waves. But amidst the forest of lights, something strange was seen. He smiled, but his gaze drifted toward the backstage, where no one was, only his shadow cast on the wall. On paper, he's at the top of his game. Net worth ranges from $40 to $150 million. A studio spanning nearly 985,000 square feet in Shreveport, larger than an industrial park. The film project with Netflix, the new series about Diddy Vodka, deals fashion television. All of these bring in huge profits. You're no longer a rapper, you're a living brand. But the paradox is the richer he gets, the less he speaks. The more successful he becomes, the more he withdraws. People used to think 50 Cent survived to prove his mettle. But it turned out that surviving was just the beginning of a different kind of emptiness. From a child in South Jamaica, he fought for money. When he has money, he fights again to be respected. Once you have both, there's nothing left to trade. That's not a victory. It's the end of a reason to continue. Looking back at his career, every step he took was linked to conflict. When he was still unknown, he waged war against the entire rap world. Ja ruled the game. Diddy, Rick Ross, Fat Joe. Once he became famous, he continued to attack the media, the company, and even the people who had helped him. Conflict is currency. Conflict is money. But that currency has devalued. The more he fought, the more he felt there was no one left worth fighting. By 2025, his enemies were either settled or had retreated into the shadows. No one answered, no one reacted. And the worst thing for a warrior isn't defeat. It's having no more battles to fight. You once said in an interview, "When you're poor, you dream of getting rich. When you're rich, you dream of the days when you just needed to survive." That's not philosophy. It's a confession. When he was poor, he had a goal. When you're rich, everything becomes a process. Signing contracts, releasing products, counting money, going to sleep. No more adrenaline, no more feeling alive. The price of glory is silence. Quiet after decades of chaos. But for those who once lived by the sound of gunfire and music, silence is torture. Like a soldier discharged after the war. Healthy body, but the mind doesn't know what to do with peace. 50 Cent can defeat any enemy, but he can't defeat the emptiness that's slowly eating away inside him. From a distance, people still call him a symbol of success. But looking closely, you can see a man who still wakes up at 5 a.m. every morning, eats exactly 3 meals, goes to the gym, and then sits for hours in his office. Not because he needs the money, but because he's afraid to stop. You once said, "I don't know what it means to rest. If I stop, I'll die inside before I die for real." The man who survived 9 bullets is now living in a $40 million mansion. But there's no one left to shoot, no one left to threaten, no reason to turn on the microphone. He climbed to the highest peak of fame and found only wind at the top. Sometimes he tried to rekindle old feelings by creating drama and throwing out a few sarcastic remarks on social media. But the reaction wasn't the same as before. The world has changed. The audience is different. Hip-hop is no longer fueled by challenges, but by viral trends and TikTok filters. You are no longer the center of the game. You are a witness to a bygone era. And that for 50 Cent hurt more than the 10th bullet. Someone once asked him, "Do you think you've won?" He smiled and simply replied, "I win everything, except myself." A proud and bitter answer. Because every warrior needs a battlefield, and when everything has been conquered, victory becomes a prison. In Las Vegas, the show ended with applause. He bowed, his smile still radiant. But as the lights dimmed, 50 Cent quietly walked backstage, where there was no cheering, no cameras, only the breath and footsteps of a man who had fought his whole life, and now didn't know who he had left to fight. He had survived every war before, but this time the enemy was silence itself. 6. Legacy of a man who refused to die. Some people are born to win. And 50 Cent, he was born to survive. More than 2 decades have passed since the 9 bullets pierced his body. And the image of Curtis Jackson remains a symbol of resilience, but also a testament to a bitter paradox. Survival does not mean freedom. Late at night in the studio, the yellow light cast shadows on a face full of scars. Old bloodstains were still visible on the microphone. The very thing he used to call the medal of destiny. He had it all: fame, money, million-dollar contracts, a bulletproof mansion in Connecticut. But behind those walls was a man who still slept, with fear still looked around at every sound, and still kept the habit of not sitting with his back to the door. Because everything can disappear overnight, just like it did in 2000. His career exploded with Get Rich or Die. Trying his debut album backed by Eminem and Dr. Dre, 872,000 copies sold in the first week, over 12 million worldwide, making him the Midas King of American rap. But few people know that throughout that time, he still had to go to the hospital every morning to have blood clots removed from his leg, a lingering effect from the shooting. When people shouted, "King of New York," he just gave a faint smile. Because he understands better than anyone else, king means the person who has to endure more pressure than anyone else. Once he said, "If I die, I live forever." Back then, he believed death would seal his name, turning him into a legend like Tupac or Biggie. But the longer he lived, the more he understood that living forever could also be a sentence. Because in the world of showbiz, survival means you must keep fighting. You must always be strong. You must always appear indomitable, even if you feel empty inside. After the spotlight came a series of lawsuits, bankruptcies, and endless battles with those he once called brothers Ja Rule the Game, Rick Ross and Diddy. 50 Cent understands that audiences like blood, so he sold his own blood to gain attention. But then that very survival game became the new trap. Every time he wins, he loses another part of himself. When people talk about 50 Cent, they think of scandal, conflict, and violence, not music anymore. You once said, "When people call me a legend, I just feel tired, because legends are no longer truly alive." The words sound light, but they are as heavy as stone, because it's true that legends don't age, they just become ghosts of themselves. Time passes and hip-hop changes. The new generation doesn't listen to many men anymore. They listen to Drake, Kendrick, and Travis. 50 Cent's music now plays in gyms, on TikTok, or in TV shows, like a soundtrack to the past. And you, from a street icon, have now become the living legacy of a bygone era. But the scary thing is, you're not allowed to stop. Someone like 50 Cent can't retire. The whole world is used to seeing you fight. They wanted you to keep smiling even after being shot 9 times, to keep standing, even after losing everything, and to keep joking even when you were exhausted. So he still had to wear the mask of strength, even though inside there was only emptiness. Money can buy a house, but it can't buy sleep. Fame earns respect, but it doesn't buy peace. And survival, which he once considered a reward, now became a burden. He once said, in Men's Health, "I don't know who really cares about me, or if they just care about 50 Cent." In the entertainment industry, he is the one who always appears tough, always sneers, and always knows how to respond. But when the lights went out, he was just a lonely man, afraid to sleep deeply, afraid to trust anyone, and always fearing that if he showed weakness, someone would take advantage. The price of becoming an indomitable icon is no longer being allowed to fall. The price of immortality is loneliness, and 50 Cent understands that better than anyone. Now he appears less often. No more tours, no more new hits. He makes films, produces, invests, and sends out sarcastic tweets, a way to maintain his presence in a world that changes every day. They call it a new chapter. But perhaps it's just another way of surviving for someone who was once forced to live. The legend of 50 Cent never gets old, never disappears. He only became a ghost, silently passing through the ages, carrying a lesson that the whole world must acknowledge: some people are not born to win. They were born to survive, and that's what makes them immortal.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast.
There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos, now appearing on your screen.